Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be painting another improvised monochrome landscape using just one colour, Paynes grey. Paynes grey can sometimes split nicely from black into blue with lots of water, so I'm hoping for a few sort of little blue tones here. I'm using Saunders Waterford hot pressed paper, nice and smooth, so it should be interesting to paint on. I have wet my board, mostly the sky, a little bit in the land, and I'm using this long-handled bamboo flat sort of hake brush that I bought from AliExpress. I'm afraid I don't have the link for it, but if you go to AliExpress, I'm sure you'll be able to find something similar. I'm putting the Paynes grey mostly across a sort of improvised horizon line and just making some marks that I know should usually diffuse out and soften and maybe look like distant trees, that sort of thing, and then pulling across some more sort of horizontal lines that give me, and sort of shallow diagonals that will give me perspective, hopefully a few planes of land, that sort of thing. Making it up as I go along. I find this sort of thing is a really good exercise to learn about what water and paint do together in the wet in wet technique. You can improvise, make it up as you go along, and just have a lot of fun seeing what happens, really. This is quite a watery mix of the Paynes grey, swept across the top for a pale graduated sky wash. And once the sky's gone in, simply like that, just leave it alone and let it soften. If you go in and fiddle too much, it'll end up looking contrived, whereas hopefully this will end up softening out and just look like a very natural, very quiet, calm, cloudless sky. I'm putting in a few more details with richer, thicker paint that's sticking on the wet, damp paper, and running and diffusing a little bit, but not too much, because I'm applying it on thicker than the paint that it's going on top of, if you see what I mean. Just to imply and suggest hedges and hedgerows at the moment. Maybe pull across another shallow line for a sort of distant field boundary. And then I'm going to put some dry brush with the hake brush across the field on the left. That's right. Even though it's hot press paper, you can still get some dry brush effects if you're careful. So this should hopefully just give me the look or suggestion of a ploughed field, of the sort of furrows on the field, and I think that'll do. That'll be fine. Just improvising here and just seeing what can happen. And I think that's nearly it for the first layer. Just maybe a few more sort of little touches here and there. Don't want to overdo it. It's tempting to see this as a winter snow scene, but it doesn't have to be. It's literally just a monochrome scene, just something done in black and white. It's much sort of simpler to paint this way. It makes you really think about tonal value, about leaving plenty of unpainted white paper, all that sort of thing, about the power of contrast, really, when you don't have to worry about selecting colours to use. It can be quite a liberating exercise. I'll now let it dry completely and then come back and add just a few details to finish the painting off. I think the first thing I'm going to do is continue with this idea of ploughed fields, and I'm going to add some tone across this field here, just running down, following the shape of the field with a sort of fairly weak mixture of Paynes grey, and then I'll drop in some darker mixture of paint there, and this again hopefully will just give the look of a distant ploughed field. which will sort of link up with the ploughed field that I got through using the dry brush in the foreground on the left. And now using nice rich paint on the tips of the brush to just put a few sort of the look of sort of the ploughed field furrows in the very foreground, not too much though. I don't want to lead the eye there too much. Now I'm going to put in, I think, a fence and a gate across this field boundary here. I think that sort of right in the middle, there's that sort of white pathway. So I'm going to put the gate sort of in front of that just to kind of enhance the effect that the loose watercolour painting has given me there by placing in just this little row of fence posts. I'm painting these in with my number 2 De La Rowney Graduate Rigger and quite a rich mixture of paint. It may not show up against the dark hedge line there, but if it doesn't, then at the end I'll use a little bit of white gel pen or something like that on it to make it show up a bit more. Just put a few fence posts over on this side of the gate as well, not too many. I think that'll do. And now I'm going to paint in the gate quite simply. It's just a few tiny painted details on top of that very sort of abstract, unplanned, improvised wash. Is pulling it together, and this can be very good practice to help you to be able to spot opportunities when you're painting with watercolour. I've often heard experienced artists say that watercolour painting is, it's a combination of careful planning and the ability to be flexible and to seize on opportunities when suddenly a strange or beautiful effect happens just because of the unpredictable nature of watercolour. So it's combining those two things that helps with watercolour painting. So I think exercises like this can help get you into the habit of being able to sort of deliberately look for those opportunities, because that's where the magic is with watercolour. I'm just putting in a few winter trees on the back here, just some nice stark, simple branches put in with a fine rigger, dab them out if they're a little bit too dark, and then I'll put some darker bushes similar to the trees that I got from my initial wash between them, just using the corner of the brush and just sort of block in a few rough shapes, nothing fancy, so that this tree line has some sort of continuity with the rest that I painted in to start with. Now a bit of this white gel pen, it's a Jelly Roll gel pen, and it's just easier. I could do this with white gouache, but the gel pen will show up really nicely on this loose watercolour exercise. It's a handy thing to have. It's sort of a bit easier to control than white gouache, and also very useful for adding highlights in line and wash as well, so if you're using ink drawings and painting too. I think I'll put in a few small birds with my fine rigger, just a small flock coming down maybe to feed on the freshly ploughed field, something like that. Varying up my sizes so that it looks like there are some further away. And I think that will do. I'm going to call that one finished and take the tape off and have a look and see how it looks. Pulling the tape away from the painting just in case it sort of catches or tears, then it won't tear into the painting, it'll tear away. But this masking tape, ordinary decorator's masking tape from eBay, it's absolutely fine. It doesn't have too much tack on it, so it does a good job. Now with the clean white border, I hope you can see that it's a surprisingly effective landscape scene. There's quite a lot of depth, quite a few different planes and distant fields and things like that. We've got our foreground, our midground, the birds. There's a lot of different textures and tones, and all from sort of just a very improvised and very simple approach with some carefully added detail at the end. And you can see where the wet in wet diffusions are and where the marks that I made, the directions of the marks, like the dry brush and things like that, have really worked to give us the sort of ploughed field and all those sorts of features without really trying very hard. So I hope you'll give this a go. It can be a really useful exercise for getting used to watercolour painting and loose painting and the wet in wet technique. Well, thanks so much for watching. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you so much to my lovely Patreon group who support this channel. I'll see you again soon. Take care then. Bye.